The void did not open with thunder or light, for the galaxy was already filled with too much of both. It opened in silence, a tear so small at first that the void itself seemed to hold its breath. No navigator charted it, no astropath dreamed it. Yet through this fracture came something that had no right to exist in the 41st millennium. The Hulk did not emerge gracefully. He crashed, as he always did, an impact that shook the crust of a nameless frontier world already scarred by war. Soldiers of the Astra Militarum, dug into their trenches, thought it an orbital strike. Commissars barked orders to stay firm, to hold the line against whatever new horror descended upon them. But it was not an artillery barrage or a drop pod. It was a man-shaped force of nature that hit the earth like a meteor, sending shockwaves across the battlefield. The air split with the sound of tortured stone and screaming metal as manufactorum ruins buckled beneath the crater. Dust swallowed the sky, and when it cleared, something green stood where no regiment's report had prepared them for such a sight. The Hulk rose slowly, his skin cracked with dust and blood, his chest heaving like the bellows of a forge. Eyes burned with a feral fire, not guided by reason but by an instinct to smash, to destroy, to release the rage boiling within him. Around him, guardsmen clutched their laser guns tighter, though their hands trembled so much they could barely aim. At first, they thought him a mutant. Some whispered Oghren gone rogue. Others hissed that he was a demon in flesh birthed from the warp itself. The ecclesiarchy priest attached to the regiment screamed the loudest, his voice cracking through the vox as he recited half-remembered litanies against the heretic and the witch. But prayers fell like ash when the Hulk roared. It was not just sound, it was force. It ripped through the lungs of every man who heard it, rattling bone and armor alike. A cry of raw fury so absolute it felt like the war itself had found a voice. Bolter fire answered him first. An entrenched squad of veterans, drilled to act without hesitation, unleashed disciplined volleys into the green titan's chest. The rounds struck home, detonating in bursts of flesh and smoke. Yet he did not fall. His body jerked back under the impact, skin tearing, blood spraying. But then the wound sealed as if his flesh refused the indignity of weakness. The Hulk bellowed again and leapt. The trench vanished beneath his feet as he landed among them, the ground cracking open like glass under a hammer. Limbs and lasguns flew in every direction. For every man crushed in his grasp, another emptied their magazine into him. Still he tore through them, unstoppable, blind with rage. But the Imperium does not fight with flesh alone. Steel and faith answer when men fall short. From the ridgeline, a Leman Russ battle tank rotated its turret, its Vox grill growling orders as its crew locked the Hulk into their sights. The cannon spat fire, and the shell slammed into his side with enough force to obliterate a squad. The blast tore him from his feet, a flash of fire and smoke that seemed for a heartbeat to swallow him whole. Guardsmen cheered in desperation, believing it was over. Yet when the dust cleared, he rose again, burned, broken, but rising. His face twisted into a snarl, his muscles swelling as rage redoubled. The tank fired again, but he was already moving, faster than their logic could follow. He crossed the battlefield in a leap that shattered the earth beneath his takeoff. He landed upon the armored hull, his fists pounding with the strength of an artillery barrage. Adamantine plates dented and split, rivets bursting free like shrapnel. The crew screamed within as alarms filled their compartment, but the Hulk's fury knew no mercy. He tore through steel as if it were parchment, ripping open the war machine and hurling its burning heart into the air. The explosion consumed the wreck, and the Hulk stepped from the fire unharmed, blackened with soot, more monster than man. In that moment, the battlefield changed. The guardsmen no longer saw him as a mutant. They saw him as something nameless, a nightmare without a catechism, a creature that did not belong to their galaxy. Commissars raised their bolt pistols not at the Hulk, but at their own retreating men, forcing them back into the fight, screaming that to flee was heresy. But no discipline could match what they faced. The Hulk was not an enemy to be catalogued, not a foe to be recorded in the Munitorum archives. He was fury incarnate, and fury cared nothing for orders. And then came the silence, for even the Hulk, surrounded by fire and ruin, paused. His chest rose and fell as he turned, his gaze lifting not at the men around him but at the sky above. Something pressed against him, an itch, a weight, a presence. The warp had noticed. His anger was not like theirs, not woven with the prayers of psychers or the whispers of demons, but it burned so bright that it called across realities. Unseen eyes turned upon him, Shadows deepened in the corners of the battlefield. Astropaths in orbit clutched their temples, screaming of a storm that had no name. The Hulk did not understand. He only knew rage, and rage had found him a new battlefield. Yet as he raised his fists once more, the galaxy began to whisper. Rumor would spread like fire from this nameless world, that something impossible had entered the eternal war. The guardsmen who survived would tell stories that no one believed, and those stories would travel farther than they ever could imagine. The war did not pause to consider the impossible. On that nameless frontier world, as the dust settled over the broken Leman Russ, new orders crackled through Vox channels. Reinforcements were dispatched not because anyone understood what had appeared, but because imperial doctrine demanded the eradication of all anomalies. The Hulk had no name in their data slates, but the Munitorum did not need a name to muster steel and firepower. The skies groaned as Valkyries descended, their turbines slicing the clouds into shrieking ribbons. Last beams painted red scars across the ruins while heavy bolters spat from their side doors. The Hulk looked up, his jaw tightening, his skin glistening with ash and blood. He did not know what these metal birds were called, nor why they burned the sky with their wrath. He only knew they struck him, and that was enough. He crouched low, coiling like a spring, and then launched himself upward. His leap was a living catapult, and for an instant he rose higher than reason allowed, higher than the soldiers inside the Valkyrie could believe. He slammed into its hull with such force the craft buckled midair, spinning out of control. Screams echoed from within before it tore apart in fire, raining wreckage across the battlefield. Yet the Imperium's strength is not only air and infantry. The ground thundered beneath the approach of steel. Chimeras ground forward on treads, multi-lacers snapping in disciplined bursts, while more Leman Russes rolled in formation, their cannons lowering like executioners preparing to deliver judgment. The Hulk's rage met this iron tide head-on. He ripped apart the first chimera that dared close, tearing open its transport bay as guardsmen poured out, only to be scattered like broken dolls. He hurled its hull against a rust, the crash blooming into sparks and fire, the smell of promethium thick enough to choke the lungs of every man within a mile. But the tanks pressed on. For each he smashed, two more took position. Heavy stubbers rained shells against him. Las cannons lit his flesh in scorching beams. Plasma weapons hissed with searing blue. The Hulk howled, stumbling beneath the barrage. His muscles burned, bones cracked, yet his body knit itself back together in defiance of physics. He grew louder with every wound, his rage mounting with every strike. If the Imperium believed volume of fire could stop him, they learned instead that each strike only made him stronger. The men saw it first in disbelief, then in terror. His fists fell harder, his leaps higher, his skin thicker. Tank shells that had once staggered him now shattered against his chest, splintering armor without breaking his stride. He tore turrets free from their mounts, using them as clubs to smash the next war machine that dared draw close. His roar swallowed the sound of engines, swallowed even the barked orders of commissars demanding that their men stand their ground. In the distance, a basilisk artillery battery opened fire. Their earthshaker cannons spat death from beyond sight, shells screaming arcs across the sky before hammering down upon the ruins where the Hulk raged. The explosions flattened hab blocks, tore the manufactorum apart in waves of molten rock and shrapnel. For minutes it seemed nothing could survive. Yet as the smoke cleared, there he stood, his body burning, his breath heaving in monstrous rhythm. He lifted a slab of rubble heavier than a chimera, hurled it across the horizon, and shattered one of the basilisks with a strike that silenced its crew forever. Still, there was no triumph in his gaze, only fury. The Hulk did not fight for banners or for strategy. He fought because he had been attacked, and his rage demanded answer. He smashed because smashing was all he could do in a world that gave him no rest. But something deeper stirred beyond the sight of mortal eyes. With each strike, each bellow of pain turned into fury. The warp rippled faintly as if trying to listen. Psychers hidden among the regiments clutched their skulls, bleeding from the eyes as they felt the echo of his anger. It was not sorcery, not the controlled channeling of sanctioned minds, but a raw psychic noise, like thunder pounding at the walls of reality. It was unshaped, uncontrolled, and impossibly vast. Already whispers spread among the troops that this was no mutant, no alien they had seen before. This was a beast whose strength had no measure, and yet the Imperium never runs from war. The tanks regrouped, artillery recalibrated, Valkyries returned in screaming formations. But for every shell fired, for every bolt unleashed, the Hulk was there, tearing steel like parchment, hurling wreckage as weapons, smashing engines into firestorms. The field became a graveyard of men and machines, twisted metal spires clawing into the smoky heavens, corpses strewn like broken dolls across the dust. When the sun sank, its red glow struggled to pierce the haze of ash. The Hulk stood at the center, his chest rising like a furnace, his fists dripping with oil and blood. Around him, no formation stood intact. Vox lines fell silent, banners burned, steel lay shattered. Yet still, more regiments were on their way. More steel, more flesh, more faith. And the Hulk, staring at the horizon, clenched his fists tighter. His rage had not been sated. It had only begun. The Imperium had thrown flesh and steel against the intruder, and both had broken. But where tanks failed and regiments fell, the Imperium always had one more weapon. One last word written in fire and faith. The Adeptus Astartes. To the guardsmen still alive, huddled in smoking craters or dragged back to triage tents, the incoming thunder was not hope, but judgment. Drop pods screamed down from the heavens, carving through cloud and smoke like meteors. They did not fall silently. They howled as if the galaxy itself announced their coming. And when they struck, the earth cracked. The pods opened with hydraulic shrieks, and out stepped giants clad in black ceramite, their pauldrons marked with the sigil of their chapter. Their presence shifted the air. Where guardsmen quaked in fear, the Astartes moved without hesitation. Where commissars shouted litanies, the angels of death spoke none. They needed no words to carry authority. They were words made flesh, living scripture written in muscle, steel, and gene-forged perfection. The Hulk turned toward them. His body was still smoking from tank fire, his skin streaked with ash, his chest swelling with every ragged breath. He did not know them, did not care for their origin or their purpose. All he saw were new attackers, new challengers. The green beast snarled, and in answer, the first volley of bolter fire split the air. The impact was different. He had felt las fire, plasma, heavy stubbers, all scratching at his skin like gnats against a mountain. But the bolters cracked with deeper thunder. Their mass-reactive rounds tore into his flesh, detonating within muscle and bone, leaving wounds that gushed black-red rivers. The Hulk staggered, his roar shuddering into the earth. For a heartbeat, the guardsman watching believed he might finally fall, but he did not. He planted his feet and leapt, meeting the black-clad angels in a storm of fists. His first strike shattered the ground where one had stood, hurling the warrior back with the force of an earthquake. But these were not ordinary men. They did not scatter, they did not break. They closed in with chainswords revving, power fists humming, storm shields locking into place. Ceramite met flesh. And for the first time in this galaxy, the Hulk found an enemy that did not crumble in his first onslaught. The clash was brutal. A chainsword raked across his side, ripping skin and a spray of sparks and blood. He roared, seizing the weapon mid-swing, crushing it into useless scrap before swatting the Astartes away. But even as one fell, another pressed forward, smashing into his jaw with the weight of a thunderhammer. The shockwave echoed across the ruins, sending men flying. The Hulk reeled back, blood streaming from his mouth, eyes burning brighter with fury. He fought not like a soldier, but like a storm. Wild, unchained, each strike a cataclysm of muscle and rage. The Astartes answered with the cold discipline of warriors bred for nothing but war. Their formation tightened, their blows synchronized. They struck in unity, their armor glowing with the light of purity seals, their voices chanting Benharic prayers as their weapons tore at his body. But even together, even united, they could not hold him forever. He broke their shield wall, hurling one into the sky with such force his body crashed through a manufacturum tower. Another he crushed beneath a slab of stone ripped from the earth itself. Still they endured. For every marine he wounded, another rose, unyielding, their ceramite scarred, their bodies bruised, but their spirits untouched. They did not fear him. They did not worship him. They only fought, and in fighting they forced him into something unfamiliar. Doubt. For in their eyes he saw no terror, only resolve. Above them their leader descended on wings of black. A chaplain, his Crozius Arcanum blazing with holy light, landed in the ruins with a roar that rivaled the Hulk's own. His skull-faced helm turned to the beast, and in a voice amplified by Vox Grill and faith alike he declared judgment. To the chaplain, the Hulk was a demon, an unholy engine of destruction sent to test the Imperium's will. To the Hulk, he was simply another enemy to smash. Their collision shook the battlefield. Crozius and Fist met with such force the ground splintered into canyons, shockwaves tearing through the ranks of both Astartes and guardsmen. Again and again they struck, neither yielding, both roaring in defiance. Around them the battle blurred into silence, for every eye was fixed on the duel. And in that silence something darker stirred. Psykers whispered in fear. They felt the Hulk's rage echoing not only across flesh and stone, but into the Imperium itself. Every roar carried weight beyond sound, shaking the thin veil between reality and nightmare. The warp was listening, and when the warp listened, it never stayed silent for long. Still, in the dust and fire, the Hulk knew none of this. He only knew that for the first time since his arrival, he was not alone in his fury. He had found warriors who could withstand the storm he carried. And though he fought with the same blind rage somewhere deep within his fractured mind, a question sparked. Could these armored giants finally be enough to stop him? The battle gave no answer. Only blood, only fire. Only the unbroken rhythm of fists and steel. The warp has always been a mirror. It reflects not only the thoughts of mortals but their deepest emotions, magnified into storms of madness and fire. When a psyker screams in fear, the warp echoes with shrieking demons. When a world dies in despair, the warp festers with sorrow until it spawns plague-ridden horrors. But rarely, so rarely, does the warp encounter something so raw, so primal, that it cannot be defined within its usual patterns. That is what happens when the Hulk roars. It begins on a battlefield no more cursed than 1,000 others. The Astartes of the Black Legion clash with the blood-drenched berserkers of Khorne. Titans burn, guardsmen die, and psykers mutter litanies in the shadows. But among them walks a creature whose every step leaves the air vibrating with fury. Every wound inflicted only enrages him further, and every moment he continues to endure becomes a paradox to the Imperium. The warp does not know what to make of him. Demons feel it first. The smallest warp spawn imp things of madness and flame recoil as if struck. Their instinct is not to feast, not to tempt, but to flee. To them the Hulk is not prey nor vessel. He is a storm of unchecked will, a living bonfire of wrath that feeds on itself. It is not psychic in the traditional sense. No warp lightning arcs from his fists. No incantations are whispered from his lips, and yet every time he strikes the ground a ripple bleeds into the Imperium. Sorcerers of Tzeentch turn their heads and hesitate, wondering if this is a trick of fate or a rival power pulling strings. The whispers spread across the Eye of Terror faster than any Vox channel. The word-bearers, ever eager to interpret omens, whisper of a green titan whose wrath may herald the god's return in a new form. Others scoff until they feel it for themselves. In meditation, in sorcery, and visions, the Hulk's rage bleeds across the veil like a siren song of fury. Even in their strongholds, the dark gods notice. Khorne is the first to stir, not because he sees a champion, but because he sees a challenge. The Hulk does not kill for blood's sake, nor does he honor the ritual of slaughter. Yet his violence is absolute, unrelenting, and fueled by a purity of emotion that no mortal berserker has ever touched. The blood god rages at the paradox. Here is a being of endless fury, and yet he does not kneel. No chain binds his rage. He fights not for Khorne, but because rage itself is his nature. For the first time in an age, the throne of skulls trembles with something that is not conquest, but uncertainty. Nurgle chuckles in his gardens. What is rage if not a disease of the soul, festering endlessly with no cure? The Plague Father wonders if this green titan is the ultimate expression of entropy, a being who cannot die, cannot rest, and carries his torment like a contagion. To him, the Hulk is less a warrior, more a patient of divine irony. Slaanesh watches with fascination, the perfection of a single emotion honed and unbreakable. To Slaanesh, the Hulk is not ugly or monstrous, he is art. Every roar is a symphony of rage, every strike a ballet of destruction. Could such purity of feeling be turned toward ecstasy? Or is rage itself the forbidden pleasure that even Slaanesh cannot corrupt? And Tzeentch, he laughs, for here is a paradox he cannot fully manipulate. A creature who grows stronger the more he resists manipulation. Every scheme, every twist would only make the Hulk angrier and therefore more powerful. To Tzeentch, he is an insult written into flesh, a reminder that not all change can be controlled. Across mortal worlds, rumors grow. Soldiers of the Astra Militarum whisper of an emerald god of vengeance appearing in their darkest hour, turning the tide against demons before vanishing into myth. Chaos cults begin to fracture. Some turn away from their masters, believing the Hulk to be a new power beyond the dark gods. Others swear to hunt him, desperate to prove that no one can resist corruption. On Terra, the Inquisition takes note. To them, the Hulk is no savior, but a threat more insidious than any Xenos. A being outside the Emperor's light, yet able to shake the warp with nothing but his fury. That is heresy made flesh. Ordo Malleus Inquisitors debate whether he is a tool of the ruinous powers, a nascent godling, or worse, something entirely new. The warp itself begins to fracture in his presence. Ships traveling near worlds where the Hulk has fought report unstable warp routes. Astropaths cry out in terror, unable to describe what they feel except as a thunder that does not stop. A thunder of rage. And the Hulk? He knows none of this. He does not care for gods, chaos, or otherwise. He does not kneel, he does not pray, and he does not scheme. He only fights, and in fighting he grows. His anger has no theology, no philosophy. It is as pure as a star's heat and as endless as the void. But in that purity lies the most dangerous truth of all. If the warp is shaped by emotion, then what happens when one being's rage is so infinite, so unyielding that it begins to reshape the warp itself? Not as a god, not as a demon, but as something new. Something the galaxy has never known. Something even the ruinous powers may learn to fear. The Hulk roars again, and somewhere deep in the Imperium the dark gods listen, not with certainty but with unease. The rumors spread like wildfire, carried on vox feeds, astropathic screams, and the whispers of terrified survivors. Across battlefields the stories rarely align in detail. Sometimes the beast is a war god, sometimes a Xenos, sometimes a demon in flesh. But the core of the tale remains the same. A green giant whose rage turns the tide of war, who grows stronger the more he is opposed and who cannot be slain by any weapon known to man or heretic. Such tales, in another age, might have been dismissed as frontier myth, but in the Imperium of man, where every superstition is weighed for hints of heresy, no rumor is ever taken lightly. The scattered reports reach Segmentum Command, then the Senatorum Imperialis, until finally the words echo in the sanctified halls of the Imperial Palace itself. Terra listens. Within the gilded chambers of the High Lords of Terra, the atmosphere grows tense. The Adeptus Administratum calls for censure and suppression of the rumors. If guardsmen believe in a green savior, morale may fracture, loyalty may falter. The Inquisition demands investigation, their voices sharp with urgency. To them, the Hulk is no savior but a potential heretical idol, a threat to the very order of faith. The Officio Assassinorum whispers of a new target, though none are eager to accept the task. And from the darkest corners of the ecclesiarchy comes fear cloaked in piety. If this creature is not a demon, then what is it? If it is not of the Emperor, why does it inspire such awe? In the great chamber of the Senatorum, cloaked in shadows cast by golden aquilae and marble pillars, the debate rages. The fabricator general's voice grinds like steel, demanding to know whether this being could be studied, perhaps weaponized. A living engine of rage might be harnessed, chained, directed against the foes of the Imperium. The ecclesiarch recoils at the suggestion, declaring it blasphemy to even speak of such a thing. The master of the Officio Assassinorum counters coldly. Blasphemy it may be, but if left unchecked, it may become blasphemy incarnate. And through it all, the Custodes stand silent, guardians of the Emperor's body, unmoving in their golden armor. But silence does not mean inaction. Quietly, without announcement, a shield company of the Emperor's chosen is dispatched into the galaxy with a singular mission: to find the beast and determine whether it is an enemy, a tool, or something far worse. The ecclesiarchy moves in its own way. Across the Imperium, sermons are rewritten, prayers altered. The Ministorum denounces the Green Titan as an abomination, a false god rising to test the faith of men. In cathedrals of stone and flame, priests thunder their warnings, and in the darkness of hive chapels, flagellants whip themselves raw to cleanse the taint of belief. Yet for all their fury, the words of the priests cannot erase the rumors. In fact, they spread faster. The harder the Ministorum tries to silence the stories, the more soldiers whisper them in secret. To the weary guardsmen choking on blood and ash, the idea of a wrathful protector who does not die is far more comforting than distant promises of the Emperor's unseen hand. The Ordo Hereticus dispatches entire cells to root out cults dedicated to the Hulk, for such cults have begun to arise. In the underhives of Necromunda, desperate workers paint crude images of a green figure on the walls, praying for strength in their endless toil. On the battlefield, guardsmen scrawl glyphs of fists on the sides of their tanks. A whisper rises among the common soldiery. The Emperor sends his rage in flesh, but the Inquisition cannot contain them all. They burn hundreds, purge thousands, yet still the whispers return, stronger than before. And so the Hulk, who neither seeks worship nor understands it, begins to gather a following he does not know exists. In the Sanctum Imperialis, the Astronomicon flickers for a moment. Its eternal light wavers as if disturbed by something beyond comprehension. The High Lords take it as another sign. The Hulk is not simply a beast of flesh and bone, but a disturbance at the very heart of faith and order. And so, the question hardens into necessity. What is to be done? If he is a curse, he must be destroyed. If he is a weapon, he must be seized. If he is a heresy, he must be silenced. But what if he is something new? Something that cannot be categorized within the doctrines of man? The Adeptus Custodes are not the only hunters set upon the trail. From the Officio Assassinorum, whispers stir of an Eversor unleashed, its only mission to test the Hulk's immortality. The Ordo Malleus dispatches Grey Knights, their nemesis blades sharp with psychic wards, for if the Hulk is of the warp, only they may stand against him. From the shadows of the Schola Progenium, even the Sisters of Battle prepare for the possibility of a crusade. Yet across these halls of gold and marble, where the voices of lords echo like thunder, the Hulk remains ignorant. He does not know his name is spoken on Terra. He does not know armies are being marshaled in his shadow. He only knows that wherever he walks, someone tries to kill him. He cannot see the throne he is judged by, nor the priests who curse his name, nor the assassins who whisper of his death. To the Hulk, there is no politics, no religion, no empire. There is only the next battlefield, the next enemy, the next roar that tears from his chest. But to the Imperium, his existence is no longer a rumor. It is a problem that cannot be ignored, and so the question grows louder across the galaxy. Is he a curse upon man? A blasphemy walking in flesh? Or is he a weapon too dangerous to ignore even by the Golden Throne itself? They came for him not in secret but in fire. The Imperium does not always whisper. Sometimes it declares its intent with thunder. Somewhere in the ash-blasted plains of Armageddon's forgotten outskirts, the Hulk's wanderings brought him into the path of those sent by Terra itself. The ground had already been torn apart by Ork migrations, charred manufactura husks smoking in the horizon, but now a new war unfurled. Not Orks, not demons, men of gold. The Custodes descended like suns made flesh, their auramite armor radiant even in the dust-choked haze. They were not warriors like the guardsmen he had crushed, nor hunters like the space marines he had broken. These were the Emperor's personal executioners, the blades who once walked the very halls where the master of mankind still sat, silent and unseen. Each step they took cracked the ground, each word they spoke carried weight like thunder. "Halt, abomination," one of them commanded, voice reverberating from the vox grill like judgment made manifest. Hulk did not halt. He did not understand the words. All he knew was that strangers stood before him again, and their stance was one of challenge. He had lived long enough in this galaxy to recognize that stance. When the first spear of the Custodes struck, it did not pierce flesh. The Hulk caught it with one hand, metal screeching, sparks spitting. His roar shook the ruins. The Custodes did not flinch. They moved as one, disciplined, eternal, their guardian spears cutting arcs of light across the battlefield. But where their blades should have reaped, they found walls of muscle unyielding. Hulk's skin split in shallow gashes. But with every drop of blood spilled, his fury grew deeper, and then he struck back. One swing of his fist shattered a marble column of a ruined shrine and sent 2 Custodes flying into its wreckage. But unlike others he had faced, these warriors rose again, dented but not destroyed, their resolve unbroken. They were no mortals to cower in his shadow. They were titans themselves, and for the first time since his arrival in this universe, Hulk found opponents who did not crumble at once. The clash was a storm without witness, save for the ruins themselves. Every blow sounded like artillery. Every leap cracked the crust of the earth. Promethium tanks ignited from the shockwaves. Manufactorum walls collapsed as if toppled by earthquakes. Custodian blades pierced deeper, cutting into sinew, while Hulk's bellows rose louder, feeding his strength. He grew, not in size but in presence, his fury warping the air until even the shadows seemed to twist around him. Far above, cloaked ships of the Ordo Malleus lingered, watching through augur screens. Grey Knights chanted litanies within, their voices raised against what they perceived to be a demon unbound. Their runes glowed, their blades whispered promises of banishment. They waited not to strike but to judge. If the Custodes faltered, their turn would come. From the dark between those ships, something else stirred. An assassin had been dispatched, an Eversor, a creature of chem fury and surgical hate, caged only to be loosed upon monsters. Its mission was not to win but to test, to strike unseen, to taste the Hulk's resilience. While the golden giants clashed openly, a shadow slipped closer, its skull mask grinning, its talons dripping venom. The Hulk fought without knowing any of this. He knew only the pain of blades, the challenge of warriors who did not fall, and the pounding rhythm of his rage. The ground became his drum, the air his chorus, his roar the song of endless war. The Custodes did not yield, though bones cracked and auromite dented. They struck again, spears biting, voices chanting oaths that spoke of Terra and the Emperor Eternal. Yet even they began to feel the impossible. The harder they fought, the stronger he became. They knew what it was to face monsters, to break champions, to stand against armies, but never had they faced one who drew strength from their own defiance. Their precision began to falter, their perfect discipline tested by the absurdity of it. Every wound inflicted was undone not by healing but by rage itself. And then, for the briefest instant, the warp quivered again. Those watching from orbit felt it in their bones. The Hulk's roar carried into the Imperium, not as a voice but as a pulse, a rhythm of violence that rippled across the unseen sea. Demons stirred. Sorcerers turned their gaze. The Grey Knights tightened their grips on their weapons, their faith shaken by the thought that this was no mere brute of matter, but a paradox echoing into the soul of reality itself. On the plains below, the Custodes pressed harder. Their blades moved in tandem, strikes interlacing, golden light piercing through the storm of fists. For a heartbeat, it seemed they had him, their combined strength pressing him to his knees. But then came the sound, not of defeat but of defiance, a roar deeper, darker, louder than before. Hulk surged upward, breaking the hold, his fists hammering like meteors, his fury unstoppable. The Eversor chose that moment to strike. From shadow it leapt, venom blades flashing, chem rage burning like a furnace. It landed on Hulk's back, stabbing, tearing, screeching with its mechanical wail. The Custodes faltered in surprise, but not Hulk. His hands reached behind, grabbed the shadow, and with one motion he ripped it apart. The Eversor detonated in its death throw, a fireball of chem and flesh. The blast engulfed all of them. When the smoke cleared, the Hulk still stood. Burned, torn, bleeding, but standing. His breath came in growls, his eyes burned with green fire. The Custodes rose again, silent, golden, their armor blackened. Neither side would fall. Neither side could. And far above in the watching ships, the Grey Knights whispered their judgment. They did not see a demon. They did not see a man. They saw something new, something their liturgies had not prepared them for, and Terra would hear of it. The report reached Terra not as a victory, but as silence. The Custodes did not declare triumph. The assassin did not return. The augur feeds showed only devastation, and a creature still standing amid the ashes. In the halls of the Senatorum, silence weighed heavier than any proclamation. To the High Lords of Terra, silence was its own judgment. For what does it mean when even the Emperor's chosen cannot subdue a beast of flesh? The Custodes themselves did not claim failure. They spoke only what was true. It endures, their captain declared. Nothing more. No speculation, no concession, no plea. Only truth, cold and immutable. And that truth burned hotter than heresy. From that moment, fractures began to form. The Inquisition sharpened its knives, each ordo calling for its own answer. The Ordo Hereticus cried out for extermination, branding the Hulk an idol of rebellion and a danger to faith itself. They warned of cults already blooming like tumors in the hive cities, worshippers chanting beneath crude banners of green, begging the Titan of Rage to free them from imperial chains. To leave him alive was to risk schism. The Ordo Malleus disagreed, their Grey Knights shaken but not broken. They had seen demons fall, had banished creatures of nightmare to the warp itself. But when their chants of purity washed against Hulk's fury, nothing faltered. No daemon revealed. No corruption unraveled. To them, this was not a beast of chaos. It was something outside the pattern entirely. And if it was outside, then perhaps it was a weapon that could be turned inward against the ruinous powers. They argued not for destruction, but for capture, for study, for control. The Ordo Xenos added its own voice, quieter but no less dangerous. To them, Hulk was a specimen, a Xenos unclassified, perhaps a weapon of another species, perhaps a shard of old night resurfaced. Their logic was cold, but their hunger sharp, to catalog, to dissect, to claim. And always behind their logic loomed the whispers of the Mechanicum, who demanded the chance to lay chains upon this living engine of fury and remake it into something useful. And so the chambers of Terra echoed with argument, each voice raised, each faction pulling at the threads of decision. The ecclesiarchy thundered louder than all, warning that every moment Hulk lived was a moment faith itself was tested. The common soldier began to pray to him, not to the emperor. That was intolerable. In their sermons, priests painted him as a false god, a green fiend sent by the warp to mislead the faithful. Yet the more they thundered, the more fervent the whispers of the laity grew. In the mud and blood of the front lines, soldiers had little use for sermons of eternity. They believed in what they had seen, a figure who raged and did not die. And beyond Terra, chaos stirred. In the eye of terror, sorcerers and warlords turned their gaze. Word of the Hulk reached them as rumor, then as prophecy. Demons tasted his fury across the currents of the warp, a resonance of pure violence unbound by creed. Some whispered that Khorne himself had taken new form, a champion wrought in green flesh. Others muttered that the beast was a paradox, strength so absolute it defied even the lure of the dark gods. For when they reached toward him in whispers, they found nothing. No opening, no bargain, only rage. To the servants of Khorne, this was glorious. To the servants of Tzeentch, it was intolerable. For a creature that could not be turned was a creature that broke the great game. And so Chaos resolved to test him as Terra did, not with whispers but with war. On the battlefield, the consequences began to bleed through. Guardsmen fought not with faith in the Emperor but with chants of the Green Titan. Commissars executed squads for such blasphemies, yet still the chants returned. On Forge Worlds, workers scrawled his image on the walls, the crude outline of a roaring face painted in promethium soot. On the black ships of the Inquisition, prisoners whispered his name before the pyres. The Hulk had never sought worship, but worship had found him. And in this, the Imperium faced its deepest danger. Not that Hulk could not be killed, but that his very existence weakened the idea that the Emperor was the sole god of man. If one beast of rage could endure Custodes, assassins, and the flames of battle, then what else might exist beyond the Emperor's light? What truths had been hidden? What heresies had been smothered too soon? The Hulk knew none of this. He walked battlefields not as prophet or curse, but as survivor. He did not speak, he did not teach, he did not claim. Yet everywhere he passed, shadows deepened. For in the Imperium, where belief is survival, even silence can be blasphemy. And so Terra's decision grew heavier. To strike again would require armies greater still, perhaps a crusade. But to do nothing risked contagion of faith, rebellion disguised as devotion. And behind those choices lay the quiet hunger of chaos, watching, waiting, laughing. In the heart of the galaxy, the Hulk remained alone. But around him, empires began to fracture and gods began to turn their gaze. The storm was no longer coming. It had begun. There are moments in the galaxy's endless war where the very stars seem to draw breath as if awaiting judgment. Such a moment comes now. For months, the green beast had been a whisper across the void, a shadow in astropathic transmissions, a curse muttered in the prayers of soldiers who survived his fury. But no longer. He is no phantom now. He has become a storm upon the Imperium. The warp itself groans with the echo of his rage. Across systems, from the hive spires of Armageddon to the shrine worlds of Segmentum Solar, Vox feeds stammer the same refrain. It cannot be killed. It cannot be chained. It cannot be reasoned with. Some call it a demon unleashed by the ruinous powers. Others whisper of an old night weapon, some long-buried relic of human sin dredged from the abyss of forgotten wars. The Orks, of course, sing a different hymn. To them, he is the prophet of Degreen. Warbands gather, not to fight him but to chase his shadow, believing him to be Gork and Mork's chosen fury made flesh. But within the marble sanctums of Terra, voices rise in alarm. The High Lords do not argue over belief. They argue over survival. Their golden halls tremble with the weight of paranoia. The Administratum demands exterminatus. The Ecclesiarchy cries out for Holy Crusade. The Inquisition, split and snarling, whispers darker solution. Perhaps the beast may yet be turned. A weapon so unstoppable could break the enemies of man like twigs if only it could be bent to the throne's will. But the Custodes, eternal guardians of the Emperor, brook no such blasphemy. To them, the green creature is a threat no less dire than the great rift itself. A thing not of man must never walk where his light shines. Meanwhile, the Hulk does not understand any of this. He knows only that the stars will not leave him be. Every time he lands upon soil, it burns beneath the tread of armies sent to cage him. Every time he roars, ships fall from the heavens to answer with bolter and lance, and every time they strike, he grows stronger. He bleeds and heals. He falls and rises. He is fury without end, and with every clash he learns. No longer does he rage blindly. Now, in the wreckage of his enemies, a thought has begun to creep, heavy and unyielding. Why? Why do they hunt me? Why does every world scream when I walk upon it? The beast does not yet have the words, but the man buried inside him does. Somewhere within that mountain of sinew and rage, Bruce Banner remembers. He remembers a world long lost. A blue planet where the stars did not carry war upon their winds. He remembers a life before the galaxy drowned him in blood, and in those memories festers an anger deeper than instinct. It is no longer only Hulk's wrath, it is Banner's despair. The Imperium, blind to this storm, presses harder. Fleets burn their way through the void to corner him. Space Marine chapters argue over honor and duty, and the Inquisition's most secret orders speak of calling upon forbidden sciences to end him. Some even whisper of waking things best left in the vaults of Mars. For if the Hulk is truly a weapon, then surely there is a counter-weapon. Surely mankind must answer fury with fury. And yet the galaxy turns. Enemies wait and watch. The Tyranids stalk the void, curious at this prey that does not fall. The ruinous powers stir in the warp, hungry for a taste of such primal rage. Khorne laughs, for this creature is his hymn. Nurgle watches, for this creature cannot be broken. Slaanesh hungers for the ecstasy of his eternal conflict. And Tzeentch waits, for this thing may yet unravel the Emperor's game. So it is that in the halls of Terra, amidst the incense and the golden thrones, the High Lords cast their judgment. They name the green beast a heresy made flesh, a blight upon the galaxy. They decree a crusade without end, not to capture, not to control, but to erase. Let every bolter be turned upon him, let every fleet burn his trail from the void. He is not to be allowed a place in the stars. The order is carried on vox, on parchment, on blood-sealed edict. It is whispered to governors and thundered to warlords. It is carved into the prayers of the faithful. The Imperium has spoken. The Hulk must die, but the stars do not care for decrees. The beast does not bend to words, and somewhere across the void his roar answers the judgment of Terra. It is not a sound of fear. It is not the sound of surrender. It is the sound of war. The galaxy trembles, for the green apocalypse has begun. The decision made on Terra rippled outward like a thunderclap across the void. Edicts are not mere words when carved by the High Lords. They are destiny given voice. Billions stir when Terra speaks, and now the galaxy itself stirs against one creature. One solitary, raging being who knows nothing of the throne, yet has become its enemy. From the arsenals of Mars to the shipyards of Baca, fleets are armed and blessed. Weapons prepared not for a crusade against Xenos or heretic, but against something nameless, unclassifiable. The scribes call him Incarnatus Ruinae, the living catastrophe. The ecclesiarchy names him Diabolus Viridis. The Orks, louder than all, call him what he truly is in their guttural hymns, de biggest, de strongest, de unstoppable. But Terra calls him Death. To enact the will of the throne, a weapon of judgment must be sent, and so, for the first time in centuries, the Adeptus Custodes step beyond their gilded watch. Not in ones or twos, as silent watchers over distant crusades, but in a company clad in auramite, each a demigod forged by the Emperor's own gene mastery. Where these golden giants walk, the stars themselves fall silent. Alongside them march the Sisters of Silence, their null auras dragging the warp into silence, their presence a void that makes psychers weep blood, and to lead them, a name forgotten by most, but still whispered with awe by those who remember the age of legends. A Primarch returned, not in triumph, but in necessity. Prabuta Guilliman, the avenging son, the Lord Commander of the Imperium, steels himself. In his private council he had spoken no words of doubt, yet deep in the silence of his heart one thought burned. What kind of foe compels Terra to unshackle its greatest weapons against a single soul? But Guilliman obeys as he always has. Duty before reason, faith before peace. The Hulk does not know this storm gathers. He stalks another battlefield, a ruin of steel and ash where the Imperium sought once more to cage him. Titans had walked there, their god machines shaking the soil with apocalypse. Now their husks lie shattered, smoking wrecks twisted by fists that broke adamantium like clay. The ground trembles with his footfalls, his body scarred but unbroken, his rage undiminished. Around him, silence. No soldiers remain. No banners wave. Only the monster and his breath heavy as thunder. Then the stars change. A fleet unlike any he has seen descends. Gold gleams on their hulls, the sigils of Terra etched in fire. Dropships fall like spears of light. And from them stride the Custodes. No hesitation, no prayer, no warning. They are not Astartes, not mortal soldiers. They are the Emperor's wrath made flesh. And their voices are silence, their weapons sung only in killing blows. They fall upon him with storm shields and guardian spears, their movements faster than the eyes of mortals can follow. Hulk roars, his fists smashing the earth, the ground itself quaking. He swats them aside, yet for the first time they do not fall like insects. They withstand. Shields absorb, spears carve, Oromite bites into green flesh. His blood spills onto the ground, molten with gamma fire, and then the air itself folds with psychic emptiness. The sisters step forward, their null fields crushing thought, suppressing instinct, drowning the Hulk in a silence he cannot understand. The warp recoils and even his fury falters, confused by the absence of that unseen current he never knew sustained him. Banner inside him writhes, clawing against the void, his mind suffocating in the unnatural calm. It is in this moment that Guilliman descends. The Primarch towers, his presence a weight that bends reality itself. He speaks not in mockery, not in cruelty, but in command, his voice the echo of Terra's will. Creature, you stand accused of heresy against mankind. Your strength has slaughtered billions, your rage has broken the works of man. By the throne, by the Imperium, you are condemned. Hulk does not understand words, but he understands tone. He hears command. He smells judgment. His chest heaves, his fists clench, and his voice, a roar that splits heavens, drowns all speech. Leave Hulk. Alone, the clash that follows is not war. It is cataclysm. The Custodes, unbreakable in their duty, hold the line. Guilliman, blade raised, descends upon the Hulk with the fury of 10,000 wars. The ground shatters beneath them, mountains split, the void itself trembles. Hulk strikes with raw chaos, Guilliman with precise eternity. And still, neither falls. Across the galaxy, astropaths scream, the warp howls, the Orks cheer, the High Lords hold their breath. The Imperium has unleashed its spear. But the green beast does not break, and the question now burns brighter than ever. If the Emperor's chosen cannot end the Hulk, what can? The galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. Reports of the clash between Guilliman and the green beast spread not by Vox alone, but through whispers in the immaterium, carried on the screams of astropaths whose minds cracked beneath the strain of witnessing. Entire hives halted production to hear the latest rumors. Orks waged wars in his name. Cults sprang like weeds, their graffiti daubed across walls in blood and ash. The green god rises. But Terra did not tremble. Terra calculated. In the marble halls of the High Lords, voices thundered like storms, arguments echoing against walls carved with the weight of 10,000 years. Could even the avenging sun triumph against this anomaly? Was Guilliman's struggle proof of the Imperium's strength or its frailty? In the shadows of the Golden Throne, where the corpse of the Emperor rests immobile yet eternal, the custodians spoke in silence, their oaths weighed against the unfolding madness. Some whispered that perhaps the throne itself stirred, a shudder of divine disapproval at this alien force that dared challenge the Emperor's chosen. Others dismissed it as fear made manifest. The battle raged across a continent now reduced to ash. Guilliman's strikes were measured, each a lifetime of discipline honed into perfection. Hulk's blows were raw apocalypse, each a thunderclap of wrath that unmade everything it touched. Custodes fell, not easily, but they fell. Sisters of silence bled as the beast tore through their ranks, their null auras faltering against the tide of his rage. Guilliman endured, but each swing of the green giant's fists shook him, his armor buckling, his breath heavy beneath the weight of ceaseless violence. Yet even this was not the true danger. The warp itself screamed. Where Hulk's rage flared, demons gathered, drawn as carrion to a feast. But they did not devour. They hesitated. Some whispered prayers to him, their twisted voices hissing across the void. Others recoiled, unable to find purchase in his fury, as though his anger was too alien, too pure, too infinite even for corruption. Sorcerers on a dozen worlds fell to their knees, blood streaming from their eyes as visions overtook them. A green colossus, unbound, shattering gods. Was it prophecy, madness, or simply the Imperium mocking them as it always had? None could say. Guilliman, bloodied yet unyielding, raised the hand of dominion for the final strike. His vox carried one sentence across the battlefield, a line etched forever into Imperial record. If this beast is not stopped, there will be no Imperium left to save. The Hulk heard nothing. His chest heaved, his breath tore through the air, his eyes burned with radiation and hate. He met the Primarch's strike not with fear, nor with hesitation, but with the raw defiance of something that refused to die. Their blows collided, blade against fist, divinity against fury, and the shockwave consumed cities, shattered mountains, boiled seas. And then, silence. When the dust cleared, both still stood. Guilliman, wounded, armor fractured, his face pale with exhaustion. Hulk bled rivers of green fire, yet his spine remained unbroken, his roar still echoing into the sky. Neither victor, neither vanquished, only the ruin of a world beneath their feet, a wasteland uninhabitable for 10,000 years. On Terra, the High Lords conferred. Some demanded exterminatus upon any planet the beast touched, scorched earth purges to deny him purchase. Others saw him differently. Could such a being be weaponized? If his rage could be shackled, could he not become the Imperium's greatest weapon, a living spear against the Xenos, the traitor, the heretic? To control him would be to command apocalypse, to fail would be to birth a terror beyond even the ruinous powers. The schism grew. The ecclesiarchy condemned him as abomination. The Astra Militarum cursed his name with every ruined regiment. The Orks praised him as a war god. The Mechanicus whispered of dissecting him, of harvesting whatever alien miracle made him unkillable. And through it all, Guilliman's silence spoke loudest. He had fought the creature, felt its fists, endured its wrath, and even he could not end it. Thus the Imperium reached a conclusion not born of victory, but of fear. The edict was sealed in blood and prayer, its words unambiguous. Wherever the green beast walks, the Imperium shall burn. He is an enemy of man. He is anathema to the throne. He must not live. The Hulk does not hear these words. He does not know of Terra, or the throne, or the endless politics that gnaw at the Imperium's marrow. He only knows that wherever he goes, the sky burns, armies rise, and death follows. He walks alone through ruin after ruin, his fists still clenched, his fury still unspent, his heart still pounding like a war drum that will never cease. And the galaxy watches. Some pray for his death, others whisper of his ascension. But all agree on one truth. The Hulk cannot be stopped. Not by mortal. Not by Primarch. Not by throne nor god. He will rage until there is nothing left to rage against. And in the grim darkness of the far future, perhaps that is the most terrifying fate of all. Long after the battlefield had fallen silent, long after the last custodian withdrew and Guilliman returned to Terra without triumph, the galaxy would not forget. The Hulk became more than flesh. He became story. And in a universe as vast as this, stories are sometimes more dangerous than armies. On the fringes of Imperial space, underhivers painted crude images of a green titan upon walls, scrawling words of rebellion beside them. He smashes chains. He breaks masters. Arbits burned them, but new ones always appeared. On war-torn frontier worlds, Astra Militarum veterans spoke in hushed voices of the day they saw something stronger than titans, a beast who tore war engines apart with his hands. Commissars executed such talk as heresy, but the memories lingered all the same. Among the Orks, the myth grew faster than fungus in a damp hold. They sang of him not as foe but as kin, a war god who outdid even Gork and Mork in raw violence. Wows were launched in his name, mobs screaming, "The Green God," as they charged, their belief only feeding the endless storm of the warp. Some Ork warbosses even claimed to have seen him in the fight, bellowing beside them, laughing in his rage. Was it truth, or was it the Imperium reshaping itself around their faith? None could say. But wherever Orks believed, the Hulk's shadow walked with them. The ecclesiarchy, desperate to claim authority over the narrative, declared him a living blasphemy. Preachers thundered from pulpits that this beast was the echo of old night, a punishment for man's arrogance, a test of faith from the throne. Pilgrims carried charms inscribed with prayers for protection, but secretly some wondered, if even Guilliman could not kill him, what did that mean for the Emperor's will? The schism whispered like a plague through their sermons, and in the black between stars the warp remembered. Sorcerers and heretics dreamed of a day when the beast would be theirs, when they might whisper bargains into his ear and bind his rage to their gods. Yet always the visions ended in failure. For every demon that sought to claim him, another recoiled, unable to survive the purity of his fury. He was anger unchained, but anger without deceit, and in that paradox the ruinous powers found no hold. He was both curse and immunity, both abomination and impossibility. On Terra itself, in the shadow of the Golden Throne, silence was the loudest answer. Guilliman gave no speeches of victory, no reassurances of control. He returned scarred, his armor fractured, his eyes shadowed by what he had faced. The custodians who fought beside him never spoke of it again. In the archives, the beast was recorded as classified anomaly, a heresy not for the masses to know. And yet, in private halls, the question haunted them still. If this thing was not of chaos, not of Xenos origin, not even of the warp, then what was it? The Hulk wandered on. He never sought conquest, never spoke of war, never built empire nor cult. He walked, and as he walked, worlds fell. His steps left scars deeper than orbital bombardments. His voice, when raised in rage, drowned artillery. He remained alone, untouched by reason, untamed by creed, his heart chained only to wrath. Perhaps he would one day vanish into some abyss, swallowed by the endless void. Perhaps he would rage until even stars went dark. Perhaps but one truth carved itself across the Imperium's soul, unshakable as adamantium, heavy as fate.